Maybe if you unmute.
The microphone should be on, everyone should be on. All right, we're
Let's
ready.
try that again. Susie, Angelo, can either of you hear us?
Yes,
Thank you, thank you. So let's call the meeting to order. I see that we have 4 of our 8 CPC members. That constitutes a quorum, although I don't know that we have any official business to fight. I'm sorry, 5. I'm looking at it
On the screen.
on the screen, and yeah, we have 5 of 8. And Archie said he's going to join by Zoom, and I have not heard back from others. Okay, so we're calling the meeting to order at 6:03. And you want to pull up those agenda again? I don't have to. So we do have 5 of 8. If we have to make a motion or take a vote, we have a quorum. And majority of that would be 3 of the 5 in favor. So let's go ahead and do introductions of the council members. So we'll start with Angel right here first.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Angel Garcia. I'm a member of the Southeast CPC and also work for the City of Albuquerque's Violence Intervention Program.
Susie?
sorry about that. I've got a cat screaming behind me. My name's Susie Sanchez-Beg, and I am currently the director at the Albuquerque Center for Peace and Justice.
Angelo?
Hi, my name is Angel, and I'm one of the youngest member of the CPC. I'm a UNM student, and I'm sorry if see my fingernails. I got painted for the children for McCary Tingley Foundation Hospital for that camp. Sorry about my nails.
Chris?
Oh, my name is Chris McDaniel, a local business owner, electrician. I've lived in the community for almost 2 decades.
Ron?
My name is Ron Hobgewax. I have been lived in the neighborhood in the Nob Hill area for many years, and was the first Southeast Area Community Policing Council chairperson going back to when they were first formed. Not quite 8 years ago.
Okay, I guess that leaves me. I'm Mike Kruchoski. I live just north of Fairgrounds. I've been on this is my 6th year as of January, starting my 6th year on the Southeast CPC. I had been engaged before that in other areas, and perhaps at some point I'll go ahead and put my resume and application for the CPC into the chat if I find it. So with that, that's our agenda.
Our agenda.
Okay, so participation during meetings. How many folks do we have out there who are attendees?
We've got about 14 right now.
14. So if you are joining us by Zoom, you can certainly raise your hand and say, I'd like to speak in person with video and audio. And Kelly will promote you to panelist, which will give you those privileges to start your camera and audio. And we're not going to wait until the end of the meeting to do that. But our public comment and questions and answers, that is coming at the end of our meeting after our two presentations.
Hey, Mike, do you have a speaker there? It's kind of hard to hear what you're saying.
Kind of hard.
Let's see if I can check.
Say again?
I was wondering if you had a microphone there.
We do.
Can you move it a little closer?
We just did that. Thank you, Kelly. We're trying to, if we get to public speaking and you want to sit in the chair at the end of the table, we'll move the owl closer to you. Is that better now?
A little bit. I'm going to try to increase the volume here.
Okay, so let's see here. So if you want to speak, just raise your hand, and at the appropriate time, if it's a question for one of the presenters, you can come sit at the table, or raise your hand and join us as a panelist, or wait until the last 30 minutes of the meeting for public comments. Okay, so guidelines for participation. Oh, identify yourself before you speak. We had a problem last time where an attendee here couldn't read the name up on the screen. So it would help to say, I'm Mike Kruchoski. Okay. Okay, so we do have the agenda, which is draft up there, and I'm going to immediately say that item number 5, review and approve the minutes, past due, very past due. I'm asking for a meeting to discuss what goes into our minutes. I know that the basic things are well known, but I want to have a clear understanding and agreement. I did circulate those minutes for CPC member reviews and got no comments. So I will call a closed session to discuss those if you want, but I am asking to remove item number 5 and defer that for a closed session with the appropriate members.
I second that motion.
Who so moves?
Well, wouldn't we do that as part of when we approve the agenda? Is that the only agenda change that you're making?
That's the only agenda change that I'm asking for.
And the motion would be to approve it as amended?
Amended, correct, that we'll have a discussion or two privately about what goes into our minutes and how detailed or not.
Yeah, I want to be part of that discussion.
Hey,
But yeah, I second that motion that Ron brought forward to approve as amended.
any further discussion? If no further discussion, all in favor, so indicate, raise your hands if you're on screen. It looks like 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't see Angelo. So we have 4 of 5. Angelo, do you want to say approve?
Approve.
Okay, so unanimous. I will send out a request to have that discussion at a time that's convenient for the most number of our members and support staff. So we are ready for our first speaker, which is the FBI presentation, Special Agent Raul Bujanda.
Yeah, you got it right. Awesome. Am I talking to any speakers so everyone can hear me? Is everyone can hear me okay?
Let's move
Oh,
that
that's it
to
right
him.
there, right? That's not like one big water bottle. Fantastic.
Let us know if you can't hear him.
So hopefully everybody can hear me okay. I see most of you on the screen as well. So thank you for having us. Thank you for having me and Frank here as well. Obviously, Frank, you all know Frank, he's our PIO. You make sure that we get the message for the FBI consistent and obviously always correct. So that is his primary focus, to make sure that I'm saying the right things. I kind of see this as a fluid conversation. I've done this in a different region. And so if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to stop and ask them. But I'm just going to start with a little bit as far as our relationship with APD and what we're doing on very common themes together. As you would expect, we are focused with them and partnered at the hip when it comes to violent crime. So violent crime is a big effort that the FBI has taken on here in the state of New Mexico. It's not what we would consider to be traditional FBI work, but we understand this is the community that we live in, and we have to be responsive to the community that we are responsible for. We live in these communities. These are the communities where our kids go to school. These are the communities where we go and do our shopping just like the rest of you. We want to make sure that they're safe. We want to make sure that the FBI is doing their part to make sure that we are working together with our partners, in this case APD, to make sure we're getting that mission across, and we're making sure that the community knows what our efforts are and what our joint efforts are more than anything. We obviously work this in conjunction with our task force, and it's a while when now we're kind of separated out, but it's still the same thing between the violent crime and the violent gang task force. And that is to go ahead and try to leverage each other's resources, manpower, and everything else that we bring to the fight to make sure that we're addressing violent crime and violent gangs within our communities. Obviously, our best effort is always going to be, and our best resource is always going to be the community themselves. The more that we have an open dialogue, the more we have an open conversation about how it is that we can improve things, the more effective we're going to be. We're going to be deaf-toned and we're not hearing, listening to our communities and hearing what their concerns are and not addressing them as they would like us to be addressing them. By the same token, we might be focused on one thing when maybe the community feels we should be focused on another. But if we have an open dialogue and open conversation, then we'll make sure we get it right. And we're going to get it right more often than we're not. So as far as the FBI goes, we have an interesting mission in that we have dual mission. Besides our criminal threats, we also have national security, but we're also an intelligence-driven organization. So that means that we do the part that most in other countries, that is a separate agency. We do it here in the one stop. It works for us because that intelligence drives what it is that we're actually focused on in whatever area of the country that you would want to mention. We have national security threats. Like you all know, we have 2 national labs here in Los Alamos and San Diaz. So those take up a lot of our time and a lot of our resources, like you would expect them to. Want to make sure that those things that are happening there are protected, and that the people that are working those specific areas and those specific technologies for the future are also able to do their jobs free of any harm, free of any threat, regardless if that's a threat both in the United States, which is domestic, or anything that's international, that's driven by any kind of state-sponsored actor. So as far as the makeup of how we go ahead and accomplish this, so here in Albuquerque, our office is the headquarters. And throughout the state, we have 5 what we call resident agencies. They're just smaller offices that have a smaller footprint, but they also cover parts of the state. Those would be in Santa Fe, Farmington, Gallup, Roswell, and Las Cruces. In here at headquarters city, we have our largest contingent of agents, and this is kind of where everything comes out of, right? This is where we keep all the big bells and whistles. But we deploy those throughout the state as needed. And there was one good example that I heard a different agent give a presentation to a bunch of school teachers, and I think this was a good kind of a way of looking at it. You know, the FBI might not always be the first to a problem, whether it's a crime incident or named a threat. But once we get there, we're there for the long haul, and we won't leave until it's done. So once we do arrive, we bring a whole lot of resources to the table, and our job is to make sure that we're not going anywhere until it's done. And those resources might not come here from the state of New Mexico within our office, but they come from somewhere across the country. There are 56 field offices, one of which is Albuquerque. It's real simple for us here in the state because one office, we cover the whole state, and we don't have to compete with any other field office to do our job. We have one U.S. Attorney's Office. Everything that we prosecute on that end, that is their responsibility. We work jointly with them. We have a great partnership, and so does APD. And for the most part, there's nothing really that they will not say yes to. They do the job just like we do it. We do it for the right reasons. So I just want to touch a little bit on kind of some of the themes that I've been really pushing out at different venues. And one of them has to do with school violence, and the other has to do with cybersecurity. I want to start with cybersecurity because when down to school violence, it's a very passionate, very close to the heart kind of theme for all of us, right? Especially what happened with one thing. But in cybersecurity, that is something that we hope to change some of the messaging. A lot of businesses, whether it's small, large, whatever it is, or individual citizens, what we want to try to change as far as in the way people approach cyber scams, cybersecurity, ransomware, denial of service, is that the first call should always be to that individual or that department that is going to go ahead and mitigate your threat that it just impacted your system, right? You want to get back into your IT system. There's nothing that we do today to include this meeting. If we didn't have IT, we wouldn't be able to have this. If someone were to come in and give us a denial of service, we'd be done, right? We'd only be us here in the room. So after you make that first initial call to the person that would try to remedy that problem for you, the second call should be to the FBI. Because the FBI is constantly looking, and not only are we looking, but we're gathering, like I said, we're an intel agency. We're gathering information from all these threat actors whose main goal when it comes to cybersecurity is to make a profit. In some instances, when we're talking about state-sponsored actors, whether you name the actor that you want to mention, their purpose is to disrupt, right? They want to make sure that they impact our critical infrastructure, but for others, and the main majority to include some of those state-sponsored actors, is to make a buck. But since we are seeing these threats and these attacks across the country, we've learned from them, we learned their patterns, and in many cases, even their decryption keys, right? So they come and encrypt your system through a ransomware attack, regardless of how they got into your system. We might actually have that key. So the one thing that I would just want to message to everyone, whether it's a private citizen or a company or small or big, is if you contact us, you'll have us there soon. I'm not going to say hours or minutes, so we'll be there soon. And we're going to work through that problem together, because together we might already find out that we can give you some strategies and some techniques that we've seen somewhere else that they worked. And if it helps you mitigate your problem, that is a good day for all of us. You know, on your worst day, we are at our best. So if you give us that opportunity, you'll see that we'll be able to take this threat like we've addressed any other threat throughout the years and see that you will be successful. And we've been very successful, especially in the state of New Mexico, recovering millions of dollars, killing some of that money before it hits its final destination, before the money is lost, and recuperating those funds to those victims. And a business is a victim, just like an individual would be. So for those, please continue to forward that information to the FBI, whether you call it in at 1-800-CALL-FBI or at FBI.ic3.gov. That's where we take most of our individual internet-type related complaints. But you got to get that information to us. Tips.fbi.gov, that works as well. Follow us on Twitter. Anyway, please call your favorite agent that you know in the office, because that's key to all of us. Going, what are we doing on too? And I think I'll even touch on a little bit on MMIP and some of the efforts we're doing there. But I'll start with Uvalde. So if that didn't raise awareness, if that didn't impact you in some way, give you some kind of emotion, then you probably don't have a heartbeat. So the FBI is going to do our part, and we're not going to wait around for the state to kind of come on board, or any other entity for that matter. I already know, talking in this forum right now, that APD is on board 100% because their task force officers, their officers are task force officers within our building, and they're super excited. What we're going to try to do before the school year starts is try to provide some training, some awareness to the educators, to the actual teachers that will be back in the classroom, so that they know techniques, what to look at as far as threat populations. And their threat population is going to be that student population. We're going to give them some tips as things that we've seen, share what it is that we know already. We're also going to talk about things that they can do if an attack does happen, what they should expect from law enforcement, and some of the things that they should try to implement and educate their students in case of a threat or attack. No different than you see in other states that have to prepare and be ready for when a tornado hits. Unfortunately, this is something that's happening that often that we have to be able to address and be concerned about. But more importantly, we want them to know what the law enforcement response is going to be. And we don't want them to be standing on the other side of the door when there's an active shooter that we're going to knock down that door. We also want them to know exactly what it is that we're thinking about, because we want to eliminate that threat as quickly as we possibly can, because those children on the other side are our children. I have a 12-year-old son. He goes to schools here. This is very personal to me. If it's not personal to you, like I said, you're going to have a heartbeat. We want to do this collectively throughout the state. But if the state doesn't get on board, then we'll go one by one with our partners that are already on board, and we'll hit as many of the school districts we possibly can. Obviously, this training is always like everything else that we do, as far as the FBI does, free of charge. You already pay us through your taxes, so thank you very much. But this is what we're going to continue to do. This is our commitment. And I hope that this also gets the community getting the message out, because it's twofold, right? So we're going to be very vocal and obvious about what it is that we're doing in the schools. We're also sending a message to those would-be attackers on the road. And we can talk about them. We all had a clearance, sorry, but if we did, we could talk to them. Those threats exist here in the state of New Mexico. But we want to send a message to them as well. That if you do this, it's not going to end well for you. We're preparing for you. We're going to make sure that that doesn't happen here. We're going to try everything possible we can. And unfortunately, it's one of those that you see many cases like in Buffalo and Uvalde, they happen too often. But if we can be better, there's things we've already learned, and we'll continue to make that effort, and you'll have our commitment 100%. And the last thing is on MMIP. Done a lot of efforts and work throughout the state. I've been here now officially a little bit over a year. And the one thing that we wanted to do is to do our part that was not only coming up with a solution or a strategy, but something that permeates and goes past any of my time and anyone else's. And I think one of the biggest pieces that the FBI does very well and has done for many years is that the resources just weren't there. Everyone was doing the right thing in their own way. The one piece is that was missing is that collectively we didn't have the one place to put everything in. So we just kind of used our same resources and are continuing to use our resources to make sure to bring everyone's data on individuals, categorize it and put it in such a way that makes sense to anyone that queries that information, whether it's law enforcement or anyone that would have and need to know or have access to that, so that we can not only provide the right information so we can find these individuals, in some cases open up investigations if that needs to happen, but more than importantly is to have and bring closure to those families that have been impacted for so many years. And we're almost there. In the upcoming months, we'll be having a training sessions throughout the state to not only teach what it is that we built and how it is to access the tool, but also to have the input from all the different law enforcement agencies so that they know how to use it and how maybe some things we might have missed. Because this eventually not only will impact and be provided as resources for the state of New Mexico, but for the country. Because like everything else, people don't have boundaries. People will not only leave the state, but go to other states, but they might also even leave the country. And we'll make sure that that information is captured in such a way that it really kind of starts to bring the closure that we're looking at. To include, if your loved one might be missing for a long time, but they might have had an encounter with some local law enforcement agency somewhere up in Colorado. We'll know about that, and then it'll be our responsibility to reach out to that agency and say, make that connection with the family members and bring closure to that. That's on a kind of a simplest level. And in some instances, we might have to bring some bad news, but that's okay, because that at least brings closure and a solution to something that right now it seems to have no presence, seems to have in so many instances. I've talked to different families. It's, there's deafness, there's nothing being heard or said on the other end. And I totally get it, because I wouldn't want to be in that situation. So that's all I have. We could talk about many different other things. I have a lot of different notes that Frank provided me, and I have a lot of different topics that are in my head, but I will definitely open it up for any questions.
Did I hear correctly the abbreviation MMPI, or was it?
MMIP,
MMIP.
murder, missing, and digital.
Oh, okay, that's, I got it.
Right on. No,
Thank you.
So I had a question, like, how would a school reach out to you guys for that training?
So what we're hoping for is in the next couple of weeks, we're gonna request an audience with the state. So with the Secretary of Education for the
Oh,
state,
okay.
and hopefully that they decide to go ahead and make this something else, part of the in-services that all the school teachers will do before the day one of, when school starts again. If it doesn't work out that way, then I would say, reach out to Frank. If you have a one-off schools and whatnot, that we're unable to get that kind of commitment,
Yeah.
then we're still gonna try to do that with the major school districts, obviously here, APS here in our area. We're gonna do the same thing down in Las Cruces, the same things up in Santa Fe. And those will be easier because they are smaller and there's less of those schools to reach about a bigger contingent of people. Here is where it's a little bit harder, so that's why the commitment would be nice to dedicate that time, because then you have all these other issues and concerns with unions and whatnot, and so much time with training and whatnot. But if they can make that so, we want to get in front of them. Right.
And I only ask, and I'll get your card, Frank, because I'm on the governing council for Robert F. Kennedy Charter School.
Okay.
And a consultant has been reaching out, and if we could get it for free from the
Yeah, of
experts.
course. Yeah, so what we're looking at putting together, so you have awareness. So we have a training called Stop the Bleed. That's not what you want to hear, but that is something that we want to try to put that knowledge in the educators as what to do if something does happen.
Get to know it, yeah.
Exactly, just to give them enough time so that people survive. You'll get to what we consider our alert training, but it's going to be more of the run, hide, fight with some kind of tactics and techniques that you should be training not only your staff, but in some instances, even your students that are in front of you. And then we have also the resource officer working group and what you can expect and should expect from them as well. And it should be a collaboration that's continuous throughout the year, but like the charter schools.
Yeah,
That's the one that really concerns me. The resource officers usually are not at the charter schools.
yeah.
And, the way they do things are not necessarily dictated like you would want them from the district. So those are ones we would want to kind of do as one-offs to make sure that they know exactly. And also just looking at how they can harden their system, the schools themselves, things for people to think about. We are trusting society.
Yeah.
And it's that trust that, people take advantage.
Awesome, thank you.
Special Agent Bujanda, what is your 800 number?
It's 1-800-CALL-FBI.
Susie, you have your hand raised?
I do, thank you. That was a great presentation, thank you. And Angel, you stole one of my questions, so I'm glad I got it answered. Because we work with a working group that works with schools, and a lot of us are over 30 and we don't always know some of the the new stuff that the kids know, so it's always good to know that there's training available. So I'll definitely tap into that with Angel. My other question would be, leading up to some of these large events that we're having over the summer, specifically, we've got Juneteenth coming up, we've got, all of the Summerfest events. Like, do you work in conjunction with the city to, keep us safe, to simplify it?
Yeah, so every event that we have in the city, in the state, we always partner with that agency that has the lead. And we always offer our resources. Some of them is right from the get-go, so we're planning. So example, Balloon Festival, that's something that we're involved in from day one. Other events that are coming up, we're always looking for threat information and threat streams that may be coming up. So we want to make sure that we pass that information on to that department or to that event coordinator so that they have that information that we're aware. And we're always going to be involved, whether we're obviously just out in the front where we're very visible or we're working it behind the scenes. And at the same time, there's nothing that really doesn't happen. And I think Luke would probably say the same thing as far as law enforcement in the state, but we don't do together.
Cool, thank you.
And that just ties a little bit, and I just want to touch on the jurisdictional piece. So a lot of the things that are state local matters, except that anything having to do with children, that's a completely separate category. Like, we're in 100%. We don't need anyone to invite us. But on things that are strictly state and local matters, we technically need an invite by that chief or that sheriff that governs. But usually that kind of works along the lines that I make the call as we're already deploying and say, you need our help, correct? And I've never heard a chief or a sheriff say, no, turn around and go back.
Yeah, I know they're all working hard to keep all of us as safe as what they can.
Sir?
Thank you for being here. My question is really related to the large event public safety kinds of concerns that were just raised, and that is specifically as it relates to domestic terrorism. We've got the January 6th hearings going on right now. I think domestic political terrorism has been identified as one of the major threats to the nation. what are we seeing in New Mexico? What's the FBI doing in New Mexico related to this?
So that is a threat that is our responsibility. We monitor it consistently and every single day. We look at those trends that we see nationally on the national level. And the one good thing is that we're not seeing in other places that we're not seeing the same thing in the state. Doesn't mean that that threat doesn't exist. It means that we know who those individuals are. It means that we are making sure there's always a fine line. What is a protected right? You know, we all have the right to say whatever it is we want to say, whether we think it's offensive, whether we agree with it or we don't agree with it. What makes that domestic terrorism is that we have a felony charge that we can apply. And is there a violence that's insinuated or acted upon that makes it directed at domestic terrorism? A lot of these threat actors know to kind of fall on that fringe, or they push that line, but they never cross the line. That doesn't mean that by any less are we not concerned. We are concerned. We're always looking for individual sources of information to make sure that we stay on top of this threat, and it doesn't happen here. Doesn't mean that we can't have other actors come from outside the state and impact us as well. But again, because as a whole, the FBI is not in isolation working. It's not just in Mexico, it's the country itself. So anything that they would see, whether it's on social media or, you know, or actually through sources of information, they would pass on that information and somehow from day one. As far as what's happening in the state right now, as of this moment, we don't have any active threats, domestic threats that we're concerned about. Doesn't mean that we wouldn't down the road, but at this moment, there's nothing that we're actively looking at.
Thank you.
Not sure where we are standing in terms of time. I think the first 20 minutes was all the intro and stuff like that. And you've got about 15 more minutes, according to my watching calculations. I do have a personal experience to share about somebody who caused quite a bit of consternation in our neighborhood, riding around and shouting at people that he deemed as being liberals, that they were going to die. And it started escalating. You're going to die, and I'm going to be the one to do it. And pretty soon, he was actually threatening to kill, like me, my wife, my autistic granddaughter, made her cry. And so we did have a discussion with Commander Languit's predecessor, Commander Yara, right? And had probably about a dozen people talk this through, and we're pretty satisfied with the result, because APD then sent out CIT to talk to the person, and then they continued to have welfare checks to make sure he was on his medication. He was autistic himself. Sure. And that was just an irony, but what I was going to start with was that I did call the local FBI office, and I told them the situation, and I have somewhere in my notes the name of the agent I talked to, but she said, report it first to APD, which is what we did. And we had the meeting with Commander Yara. And then if there's a federal nexus, domestic terrorism as opposed to emotional imbalance and maybe some drug use and so forth, anyway, the APD intervened, and it seems to have died down. And I've asked around the neighborhood to see if he's driving around shouting stuff, and it's diminished. So,
do you remember recall like what year that was in? I'm just curious.
It was in early January 20. When was the election? 2020. Yeah, it was right around the first part of January 2021.
Before January 6th.
It was right in there.
Okay. So we've changed a little bit of our processes. We now have one of ABD's CIT officers within what we call our Guardian Squad. And Guardian is just a mechanism that we use to take in all this information that is being reported to us via 1-800-CALL-FBI or any other means, tips.fbi.gov, IC3, all that information is coming to us. And then it gets routed to the respective field office, right? It's a 1-800 number, it's a call center that's out in West Virginia, and then make sure that it comes to us. So when that information comes to us, the one thing that we do differently now, that is we would consider a threat to life, because he's literally was making a threat to your life or to the lives of your family, is that instead of doing that kind of handoff, we would go and reach out as well. We would take the APD CIT officer with us or similar resources and do exactly what APD did for you, but do it together because they're already a part of that, right? That was part of our, can we make this better? How can we be more effective? How can we stop some of what you got to begin with, which is call someone else? We don't want to get in the business of that anymore. We're actually moving away from that, where I don't want people to kind of figure out on their own, is this a state matter? Is this a local matter? Or is this something for the FBI to deal with? Just call us and let us figure that piece out. And then we will contact that agency. Now, if something's happening right now, crime is happening, we call 911, just like we would with anything else. And after the fact, we will coordinate with that local agency. If there's a federal nexus, it's something that we should be involved in. But when it comes to something that's that kind of, it's not really a threat right now, but I'm not sure what it is that I have. Let's not try to figure out, just give us a call. We'll figure it out. Then we'll make those contacts to include that if it ends up going back just to APD, it was still contacted, those are still addressed, and we would still do the same things that was done. But this way you don't have to worry about who do I call first. Because we waste a lot of time, and in some of these instances, time is of the essence. You cannot, it just doesn't seem like that big a deal. And then we find out it was. And that's across for any threat that would be. If you're not sure what it is that you have, just give us a call.
Okay, so John Comstock does have a question. What cities in New Mexico have FBI offices?
So it's here in Albuquerque is your headquarters, Santa Fe, Roswell, Farmington, Gallup, and Las Cruces.
Thank you. Are there other questions from anybody? Attendees, panelists?
There's something in the chat.
That was it.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so I think you touched on a question that I was going to ask, and that is, it sounds like you are reviewing law enforcement's coordination of their response to things like Uvalde and Buffalo.
Right.
So I was happy to hear that you're in discussion with APD, among others, about what were the lessons learned in terms of, and maybe were there critical differences in how law enforcement coordinated the responses in Uvalde versus Buffalo. Sounds like Buffalo was more immediate and took action right away and stopped it pretty fast.
Right. Don't have a whole lot of details as to, because it's still an ongoing investigation with Uvalde. Buffalo, we got more details about it, different type scenario. And it's always kind of hard to kind of figure out what was that law enforcement agency or the law enforcement presence thinking in the moment of. But what I can talk to is our response. And I know that our response is very similar to what APD's response is, because we train together. New Mexico State Police, we train together. Bernalillo County, we train together. So I know what their tactics and their protocols are, because they're very similar to ours, which is once we deploy, we relinquish that control to mitigate that threat. So at that point, it's those individuals that are responding. If I'm driving by an instance and it's at a school, then it's on me. And I hope I have a friend that shows up, but I'm telling you, I'm not gonna be waiting for it. I decided that this is a career that I wanted to do. This is a commitment that I wanted to make to my community. I'm going in. I'm going in with whatever I can, whether it's a chair or what did I have on my side, and I hope I have enough bullets. But that is going to be our response. It would be the same response for the departments as well. Now, if you have more of a resource, then you take a more deliberate approach, but it's still a very forward-leaning, very kinetic approach towards that threat. Once you eliminate the threat, then you can assess, what is it that are my next steps? How is it that I'm going to go ahead and start to process the scene? How is it that I'm going to start to notify the families of the victims? How is it that am I going to address the victim themselves and get them out of this setting? And at the same time, thinking about the investigative piece, right? Because at some point, you want to make sure that someone pays for the crime that just happened. It's a layered approach. There is no one step or two, or one should happen over the other. It's a matter of how that situation unfolds. think Frank, maybe when we was talking PIOs this morning down in Las Cruces, is that when these things happen, it's chaos. And it's as much as you want to say we learn from this past setting, and this is how we're gonna do it, we definitely gotta be better and be more effective in our strategies. But yet we still don't know what it is that's gonna be, because every one of these situations and each one of these scenarios is gonna be completely different. But we will, because we have the overall idea of what it is we want to accomplish, we'll get it done.
And I presume in general, you do not want to reveal all the details of if this, then that, if that, then this other thing.
And then it
Because
complicates the matter.
if you were to reveal those kinds of policies, procedures, and how you train, then somebody could use it to get around the weaknesses.
True, I mean, the part of it, and the other part is also, sometimes we're looking at these threat actors, they might be juveniles. And there's a lot of different restrictions on what it is that we can and cannot say when it comes to juveniles, even if it is someone that just committed mass murder. But yeah, as far as our techniques and strategies, I mean, I'll vocalize the one, which is we're gonna get you. How I end up doing it, it's my business.
Other questions or comments? Were the four of you back there able to hear everything that was, and how was the audio for those of you joining by Zoom?
I mean, to do a little bit back.
Okay, if there are no further questions or comments, and you don't have anything else that you want to share at this time?
Anything else, Fred? Say no. All right.
Okay. Well, then we will go ahead, and press on with Commander Languit's presentation.
Good evening, everyone. Can you guys hear me okay?
Loud and clear.
Oh, perfect. And then I don't know, for those of you in person, we do have Amir Chappell assisting us with providing the numbers and statistics into a visual. I don't know if that was pushed out to you guys or if you guys able to view that. Where we're presenting, of course, the last 30 days or the last month's numbers, and we also compare that to the few previous months before that. So, Mike, is that available for everyone or no? Not at this point.
Well, let me give this a try. You're going to have to let me share the screen, and I'll have to go and find it. I did download those. I didn't get home till 4:30. That's the first thing I did. Just try to download those. Let's see here. All righty. Now, the question is,
Go back to the wood stuff and put a shared screen. Go back.
I need to get back to you here. Come on. There we go. Share screen.
There you go. Green button at the bottom.
Well, this,
Yeah, just click on that.
there we go. Well, how does that look?
I think Amir did a great job on it, and in the spirit of transparency and just to kind of see where we are at in the Southeast Heights of what type of crime is occurring and where it's occurring. That's what it's important for us as police officers, so we know where to deploy our resources. But then for the community, it's important for you guys to know what's occurring and how much of that is occurring. So when it comes time for us to ask for more resources and help from other organizations, we're addressing the issues that need to be addressed. So, I don't know if you want to go scroll down, Mike. I was just going to go through just how we kind of presented it, where we have different categories. So this report was taken from May 19th to June 15th. And there was 962 incidents reported, excluding accidents. And for those incidents, we have them broken down into crime categories. And the first one is crimes against persons, where we had 119 aggravated assault and batteries, 8 criminal sexual penetrations, 244 domestic incidents, 1 homicide, 1 kidnapping, 40 robberies, and 10 simple assaults. on our property crime side, we had 28 auto burglaries, 94 auto thefts, 33 commercial burglaries. We had 72 larceny and forgery type incidents, and we had about 37 residential burglaries. And then in another category, we had 29 drug violations and 100 violations for like disorderly conduct, 13 DWIs, and the total calls for service during this reporting period was 9,635 calls for service that the officers assigned to the Southeast Area Command responded to. So for this site, now the use of force statistics is going to be a little bit different. This is going to be going from May 1st to May 31st. So it's a month reporting. We had a total of 13 uses of force, where 4 of them were level 1s, 6 of them were level 2s, and 3 of them were level 3s.
Okay, I'm just learning how to share my screen here and scroll through these in the right direction. So you want me to back up on any of these?
No,
or-
no. If you want to keep it here, and I will tell you, the Southeast Area Command compared to any other area command, we have the highest uses of force. But then again, we do also have the highest on sites and the highest numbers of arrests. So our officers are really just busier. They're making more contacts, and with more contacts and more arrests, we of course there's going to be uses of force. Now, of course, we want to make sure the force that we're using is in policy and within the law. So yeah, for last month we had 13, 6 of which, oh, I'm sorry, yeah, 9 of which were investigated by the Internal Affairs Force Division, and then 4 of which were investigated by the Southeast Area Command, Chain of Command. So these are the usual numbers that we provide every month. We just kind of wanted to give a visual, and I will tell you in the middle of this right here, there was the number for March is accurate, 9357, but April, that was a typo. So we actually got the right number, because I would find that like better buy a lottery ticket if we had the exact numbers of calls for service, and that was a mistake. So we verified that. So I could get with Amir and give him the right number for April. It just turned out the analyst that pulled it forgot to update this one area, which was calls for service for the month. As you can see, we're trending upwards, and this is something we kind of expected. As it gets warmer, there's a lot more, vehicle traffic, foot traffic. People stay out later, longer, which generates more calls for us. I will tell you, and I don't have it in the presentation, but what I'd like to do is, it's always good for us to do a year-to-year date comparison, or like a month to where we were this month compared to last month. But a lot of times when we recognize trends, certain specific crime trends or hot spots that pop up, sometimes we may not want to wait a month to adjust our strategies and our plans. So what I like to do is I like to provide I'm provided with the weekly crime report, which tells me which crime is up and down and where it's occurring. And I make sure that each officer gets it. So when they do have proactive time and they are in between calls for service, they know where to go to conduct their proactive, high visibility patrol, their on-sites and all of that good stuff. And I can tell you what I track for the violent crimes overall, and this is a year-to-date comparison. We're trending in the right direction. Aggravated batteries and criminal sexual penetrations. Aggravated batteries is down 22% compared to last year. The criminal sexual penetrations is down 59% compared to last year. The only one that is up is robbery. And we're working with the other divisions within APD, our specialized investigative units. We have our other specialty units like motors and our tactical officers helping out. This is a crime category that we still need to work on. again, we're up 50%, so that is concerning. So a lot of the, now that we're kind of coming off of our violent crime attack plan for the Pennsylvania and central area, we're going to be adjusting to really focus on how do we bring down that robbery. And I don't know if you guys recall me reporting in previous months, it was always robbery, auto theft, and ag assaults. And I'm glad that the ag assaults and the auto thefts have trended in the right direction. So now we could really focus our attention on the robberies, which leads me to property crime. So auto theft, we're at 2%. So what that means is we've had 672 incidents compared to 658 in 2021. Now this is good because it's good in the sense that at the beginning of the year, after like the first month, we were up 22%, and we didn't want it to go any further. So we did some aggressive operations to keep it from growing higher. And we've slowly brought it down from 22 to 16 to 12 to 8. And now we're at 2%. So we're pretty much flat with auto thefts, and we want to keep it going in that trending direction to where we're preventing more and more auto thefts. Burglary is down 21%, and shoplifting is down 44%. Overall property crimes is down 11% in the area command. So again, that's always nice to see us trending the year-to-date trends. But at the end of the day, even like, and I know I've said this before, we don't want, even one aggravated battery and assault to occur. So what we really look at too is, besides the numbers, is we try to really have our crime analysts read the actual reports to figure out if there's any trends that they can identify for any of these specific crimes, to either point out if there's a serial offender, or if there's just some type of education that needs to be put out to the community because they've picked up on a trend. So really kind of doing that qualitative dive into what's going on, just versus looking at the numbers. But that's how our numbers are at up to this point in the year. I mean, we're in the middle of June. I don't know if everyone got to watch the update that I gave, since I wasn't able to join you at the last CPC meeting. But basically, if you hadn't, a month ago, our shootings went up. It spiked, specifically in the international district, where to this point it seemed like we're having a shooting every night. And like I said in the video, just within 6 weeks, I had 2 separate incidents where officers were fired upon. It's pretty scary. It's pretty concerning. It's alarming. So I poured all of my resources. We adjusted hours, we adjusted personnel into really increasing our presence in our operations in that area. And I am glad to report right now, 5 weeks later, we have seen a difference to where, that spike, we were able to curb that spike of increased shootings. Other than that, as far as crime, I could stand by for any questions. I do have a couple updates on the engagement efforts if you all would like to hear them. But as far as crime and kind of what we're doing, if there's any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer.
I have a question, Lieutenant. The family offenses, you had a chart showing family offenses. Are those family offenses drug related? Is that what's going on?
I could definitely honestly say yes, some of them, but I don't have the exact number. What's comprised of that category is not just domestic violence calls, but also domestic disputes where there may not be any violence, but police still have to respond. And also escorts, domestic violence escorts, where a family member has to be escorted to go get property, right? As far as how many involve narcotics and controlled substances, I know some of them do, but I don't have a breakdown of how many involve narcotics, to answer you, sir.
It'd be nice to know how many are possibly drug-related offenses. I asked that question because I have a friend from our church who has some terrible problems with her family, and many of the issues involve drugs.
Right. No, I completely agree. I just don't, I'll be honest with you, and just my opinion, I just don't know how much. I think it'd be great Um, I think it could do some really good to have that information. I just don't know. I would caution how accurate that information though is, because again, our scope is to investigate, domestic issues, right? Unless if there's a charge for like trafficking or controlled substance or possession, that's present along with those domestic violence, like, I guess, how do I say it? Like, if it's outside of our scope, it may not be, we may not be able to accurately tell you how many do have drugs present, how many don't, because we may not be collecting that information on a specific incident because it's not within our scope to do so, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and there was another question asked, are some of those offenses alcohol related? Somebody gets drunk or, violent.
Right. And I know for that one, we can pull that information pretty quickly. I know I couldn't get into specifics on like how much alcohol, how drunk were they, but I know our officers, there is a reporting, a place on the police report to check off if alcohol was a factor. So, I mean, that would be, that number could be found pretty quickly. But as far as an analysis on it, we may not have that.
Thank
Kevin,
you.
could you go over the different levels of use of force?
Sure, absolutely. So with use of force, per the amended CASA, the first amendment, the first time we amended the CASA, we switched from uses of force and serious uses of force to a level system. So we have level 1, level 2, and level 3. Level 1 use of force is force that's most likely only going to cause transitory pain, and there's no injuries. And besides transitory pain, which most common is going to be like a resisted handcuffing, is if we show force. So if we paint someone with a taser, or if we point our firearm at someone, where we don't use it, but just by pointing that tool, we document that as a level 1 use of force. Level 2 use of force is force that is most likely going to cause pain or an injury, and it's when you use tools or strikes, distraction techniques, and holds, takedowns. That would all be what's considered a level 2 use of force. And then level 3 use of force is obviously if it's a firearm discharge, canine apprehension, or if there is serious injury, or if an individual is handcuffed and force is used upon them. So that's how we categorize within our policy. When an officer has physical contact with an individual, depending on what that physical contact is, and or if they used a tool, it's then classified as either a level 1, 2, or 3 use of force. So basically, the investigation into these level 2s and 3s is conducted by the Internal Affairs Force Division. And I'm sure you guys have all been aware that we brought in EFIT, a very experienced group of civilians that are contracted to assist our internal affairs detectives with force investigations. So that division conducts the investigations into level 2s and 3s. So for like this month, 9 of our uses of force were investigated by the Internal Affairs Force Division. Level 1 uses of force, since they're, I guess less force than compared to like level 2s or 3s, they are conducted by the division or the area command, their chain of command that's responsible for that officer. So like for this month, there were 4 level 1 uses of force that I myself did the final investigation on.
Thank you, sir. Are there any other questions?
So Commander, I will go ahead and perhaps put those slides into a PowerPoint, or put them, probably take your audio recording as you discuss them, and then put up the appropriate slides at each point that you're talking about. And we can put that up on YouTube. So it'll be easier for folks to go back to and see that you're talking to the specific slide, the graph. And I can talk to Amir about looking for correlation between the family violence and drugs and alcohol use, if that data is available. So I'll talk with him about that.
Well, thank you. Thank you, everyone. And I hope everyone has a safe Father's Day weekend.
You, sir.
Well, goodness, we're 45 minutes out from the end of our meeting. We've done questions and answers with Commander Languit, and so now is the time, as long as you need until they turn off the lights in here, to bring your concerns, questions, suggestions, recommendations, anything that is relevant to fostering greater public safety and prosperity. So come on up to the table.
And if you're in the attendee room, put your hand up and I will raise you to the level to be able to speak.
So Mike, I have a question. Was the coffee with the cop, wasn't it this morning?
It was this morning. Both Susie and I went at slightly different times, and we had some good discussions there. In fact, I have a couple of folks to get in touch with about some recommendations that they've had. So yeah, let's go ahead. Let's Sandra, right?
Yes. This question is for Commander Languit. Are you still on?
Yes, ma'am.
Good evening and thank you for your service as always. My question is regarding the shot spotter. There seems to be obviously a lot more gunshots in the evening, every evening. And I'm wondering if the data that's collected, if it is public information or not.
You know, to be honest with you, I don't know if it's public. I mean, I imagine it has to be, but I don't know if you would have to do an IPRA request to get it. I know last time we had brought sex crimes detective, the special victims section, to give a presentation. I could get in touch with Commander Torres from the Real Time Crime Center and see if he could to come and talk about ShotSpotter and answer that question, because I don't have the answer. I will tell you this though, you know, you as taxpayers have invested a lot of money into this gunshot detection technology, right? And where the majority of the Southeast Area Command is equipped with this gunshot detection technology. So the fact that it was such an investment, I think every officer and detective should be utilizing it. And I will tell you, just with our turnaround, with officers leaving, being transferred, we have new officers coming out, getting assigned. Once upon a time, we all received the training. Do we actually use it? So and this is something we just talked about last week. So we're bringing ShotSpotter, the company, back in the town. They're doing a second round of training. I know I could tell you, I could just speak for my area command. I'm having every lieutenant and sergeant make that part of their internal inspection process to ensure that officers have their accounts and they're proficient with it. Now, do I expect the officers to turn on the software on their phone or on their computers if they're going to an active call where the scene is not safe and there's bullets? No, absolutely not. They need to be focused on, you know, where to stage their equipment and their safety tactics and all that. But the benefits that this technology can provide, to where we can locate the shell casings down to like a precise, you know, location, which could help with the investigation purposes. And that's when we plug it into NIBIN and we connect it to other cases and we talk to our friends from the FBI and the ATF. After the scene is safe, officers, then I think it's very reasonable, and that's how it should be. Well, then guess what? Let's turn on the ShotSpotter and see if we can find these rounds and casings to help with these cases. So I'm sorry, that was a long-winded answer, Sandra. I will tell you.
Oh, that I appreciate that.
I'll ask the commander of the Real Time Crime Center if it's public information, because I don't know. I do have the app, so I see all of these shots. It's like a pinball machine where I'm getting the alerts. But it's in the app is running in the background of my phone, and I want to see where the rounds are coming from.
And I don't want to put Commander Languit on the spot, but he's very great at like allowing my program to pilot certain things. And we've definitely used the ShotSpotter information. And we piloted it last month, and we're gonna bring it back this month. We called it a walk-in one-stop, where the area, which was up here on Bell Street, that's one of the streets that's very, that has a high, very active. So we took resources to the community, and then we walked around, knocked on doors, and people came out and engaged with us, and we saw what they needed in that community, and we're gonna continue to do it.
Okay, great. Thank you, Commander. Have a good evening.
But don't go away. You can step back if you want. It's for Commander Languit. Can you briefly describe NIBAN, because perhaps most people here are not familiar with it, and why it's important to collect those shell casings?
Madam Languit was there twice for a second and left. He might be kicked off. Just a minute.
I'm pretty sure our special agent in charge could explain that.
Can you talk to NIBAN?
I'm so sorry. Was that question to me?
Yeah.
Yes, it was.
Oh, okay. I can answer somewhat. So NIBAN, we're partnered up with ATF and our other federal agencies and the United States Attorney's Office with NIBAN. All of the NIBAN information, I believe it's in Alabama, where all the information is fed to, because we have APD is in possession of a NIBAN machine. We're currently in the process of getting another NIBAN machine. But what's the benefit of the NIBAN is when you enter in the casings in, it can tell you if it's linked to other cases. So our detectives and our investigators, it's great to be used as an investigative tool to figure out the history of that firearm, like how many incidents that's been involved in, and then when you do, you look at who purchased the gun and you look at those time periods, it really does help paint a picture. And it also kind of establishes that network of how frequently this gun's been used and whose hands were it in when it was used. So does it solve cases? Or I shouldn't say that. It's a great investigative tool, but that's not going to make the case alone. Like you need to do police work and have other evidence to kind of corroborate what the NIBAN results give us.
Commander Languit, I noticed we have a lot of people going very fast on coal and lead, and also Gibson this week. We read the press from the city. Do you have any comment on that?
I'm so sorry. I'm having a real trouble hearing you, Kelly. I caught Gibson and lead. What happened?
We have a lot of people going very fast on lead, coal, and also Gibson with the new speed enforcement devices. Do you have a comment on that?
No, I will tell you though that we have our bike officers. They're still, in fact, we're going to extend it throughout the entire summer. But they're doing, every day they're working, they're doing a speed trap enforcement plan on the one-ways. And if the public did not know, we also just went live with 2 more automated speed cameras on the one-ways down in the university area. Just again, with just the amount of speeding that we've had, I think between the automated camera enforcement and then just having the officers doing their speed enforcement TAC plans, I think it'll help, but we just have to be consistent with it. So we're going to keep that going through the summer. Not so much on Gibson, but I'll tell you pretty close to there, Gibson and Yale. I had a lot of complaints of drag racing. We've been working with a lot of the businesses down there, and we were actually able to really break up a good group. My graveyard lieutenant really took that, charge head on, and they were able to get really, really positive results. And the business and the community down there was very, very appreciative that we were able. I guess they were at it every Sunday night. It was causing a real disturbance for the folks down there.
Okay, thank you.
Let's see here. I need to, National Integrated Ballistic Information Network. That was in answer to Maria Wolf. NIBIN. I thought it was NIBAN. NIBIN. National Ballistic. Where the heck did it go? National Integrated Ballistic Information Network. So
And I could just comment on that. So how does that complement, shot spotter and license plate readers? Like a lot of the technology that you have funded us for. A lot of times we got shots fired calls, and you guys know how it is. Depending on if there's tall buildings, short buildings, it sounds like the gunfire is coming from in front of you, but actually it's behind you. Well, this gunshot technology, it's pretty precise too, where, and of course nothing's perfect. I mean, there's echoes and stuff like that, but for the majority, I mean, you have technology telling us like pretty much within feet exactly where those rounds are. I will tell you, we had a shooting 2 nights ago, last night, San Mateo Central area, where the shot spotter picked up the first volley, which was 6 rounds. And then the second volley up on La Veda, so a block up from where the shooting happened, it picked up a volley of 5 rounds. Officers were able to locate the first 6 rounds, or on the second volley was another 6 rounds. We were able to locate 5 out of the 6 casings from the second volley. So this technology is really helping us find these casings. And then when we plug it into NIBIN, we're able to see the history and how many incidents and crimes that this gun has been involved in, right? And then you look at our license plate readers that we have at a lot of the intersections now, to where we can go back. And if we have license plate readers on every other corner, every other traffic section, we could pretty much, map out if a vehicle is involved. Yesterday's case, a vehicle wasn't involved, but let's say there is, we could pretty much map out where they came from and where they're going to, just based off the license plate readers. So that just goes to show, technology, in my opinion, is only good as the people that are invested, involved next to it, our officers, but it can really help us do our job easier, more intelligently, more efficiently, more effective.
are there other questions or comments about this? Because I can always blab a lot. Would you like to talk about reporting of shots? This morning on Nextdoor, I read this long, I call it a rant channel, about how many shots they heard, what time. They never give their specific location, how far away they thought it was. I use the ABQ Police mobile app, and I report every instance of suspected gunshots. I tell them where my address is, how far away it sounded, how many shots there were, how fast they were, whether it was screaming and cars driving away and stuff like that, which they always ask about anyway, and the direction. And if we have, instead of people getting up in the morning on Nextdoor and saying, hey, I heard shots last night, did somebody else? That's not as helpful as saying, I heard shots 3 minutes ago, approximately 2 blocks away, 5 shots in a west-southwest direction from my house at this address. So I know that there are a lot of people who complain about 242 cops, they're on hold forever. And I know that 911, sometimes there are other more urgent things to be reporting on 911 than I think I heard shots. Of course, if you heard them right outside your house, which we did one time, we called 911. But could you talk a little bit about the various ways of reporting and how helpful they might be relatively? And that's for you, Commander Languit.
You know what? I may have to do some homework on that one. I'll be the first to admit if I don't know something. I would think in that specific situation for reporting gunfire, where you're per se not the victim, right? You just want to like, hey, I just heard this and everything like you said, which is all great information. I would think the only ways to report it would be 242 cops or our mobile app, right? That'd be the best ways to get us that type of information. But you know what? Let me make a note of that too.
We can have an offline discussion sometime and do an FAQ about this. I will once again tout the relative benefits of the app. I typically get responses within 7 minutes on various kinds of calls that I make. One time I was reporting a man lying on the street. I wasn't sure if he was dead or not. I took a picture, sent the address. I had a phone call with him within 2 minutes from dispatch.
Well,
So
that doesn't happen. That doesn't always happen. I'm glad I'm always happy to hear stories like that, you know, but depending on the day and depending on how busy it is. But yeah, you know, to answer your question, I think giving us a phone call to the non-emergency number or putting it on the app, because like you said, that's very useful information. And let's say it's not a busy day and we have officers in that area. If we could, the more guns we can get off the street, the better, you know, so that's information we should have.
and if we had 20 people using the app at 2 o'clock in the morning, within a minute or two of the shots, and they said it was west from me, sounded like right outside my house, or it sounded like 3 blocks away south of me, they could do triangulation. That's basic math and geometry. So,
well, I will tell you this, and in fact, I heard it today. Our supervisors do a great job where we do get shots fired calls where citizens will call in. Hey, I heard shots, you know, it sounded like it was 2 blocks to the east. And in fact, I heard Lieutenant Gerard Bartlett, everyone knows him, best lieutenant I have, said, was there a shot spotter, PD? Right? And there are times where PD can say that the radio can say, you know what, there was a shot spotter, you know, pretty much like 60 yards away from where this caller is saying it. So again, another, it just shows another use of the shot spotter.
I see nothing else at this point.
any other questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, suggestions, recommendations? Any funny jokes that you could tell them? No. So I would say one thing. I am thoroughly impressed with my 5 years ago visit to the Real-Time Crime Center. And I'm going to see if we can't have somebody do a presentation on the RTCC. It is amazing what they have done in the past, and probably even more amazing what they're doing these days. So I've got that down on as an action item for me to reach out to them. Are there other topics that you would like to hear about, or presenters? Anybody out there, and attendees? So we can go ahead and call it an early evening then.
Roy Sherpin from the Northeast wants a presentation about homeless encampments.
So I second your motion, Mike.
I didn't hear any motion.
Well, I make the motion, listen, during meetings.
I think because I'll review my Robert's Rules of Order. I don't think you need a motion, a second, and a vote on adjourning the meeting.
Okay.
So if there's nobody else, I think Ron's waiting by. So let's
Thank
go.
you, Lieutenant.
Have a
Very
good
good explanations. Thank you.
We'll call it an evening then. And I would love dearly to have some feedback from anybody who was here. How did the meeting arrangement, seating, vision, sound work? Just give me an email or text or call me sometime and we'll figure out if there's a better way yet to do it. I think this worked a little bit better than the first time with a really long 12-foot table. And John was sitting in the corner and couldn't read the names on the screen there. So we're all ears. As much as I'm all mouth, I'm also all ears. Okay, thanks very much. Let's call it an evening. We adjourn.
Thanks, everyone. It's been a long day for me. Trying to get home.